Hey, left, right, out. Probably should have done a video a little while ago. We've had some interesting stuff going in the markets. I saw the 10 and the 30 invert. So you had an inversion there, which we haven't seen that in a while. I don't know if it's still inverted, but I saw it, what is it, 388 10-year and a 385 30, which is once again just very interesting. It seems like the market is being very orderly. I expect to like wake up one day and we limit down or something, especially when we just hear, to me it's a developing story. I haven't got a whole lot of details that the Fed's kind of bailed out a Swiss bank of some sort, or the Swiss or whatever, with the swap. I've just seen the headline. I haven't really looked into it, so I don't want to speak too much about it. But it seems interesting when you go along with the Bank of Japan thing and then the Bank of England, and they're, stepping in. I don't know really how well that's going to go, but I think it starts here shortly. They're going to be entering the bond market again. So anyway, I wanted to talk about fake conservatives and some of the propaganda that we are being being thrown at us concerning the Russian-Ukrainian war. Because I've been listening to some various like mainstreamer people, and it's like the same stories we've heard from since February, and it's pretty crazy, really. The amount of, well, Putin's dying or whatever, or Putin's in a bunker somewhere, or Putin's got cancer, he's gonna die anytime. Putin's head's lost, or whatever the case may be. It's so crazy, but it's amazing if you take the Western media and then you take media from other parts of the world, and you can compare and contrast and really see just how insane our media is. I mean, if they were just like rational, very factual based reporting without the what seems to be a Defense Department or intelligence agency filter across it, we maybe have some actual discussions about policy around here in the States. But instead, if you differ whatsoever, you were deemed somehow unpatriotic, or Putin sympathizer or something. That's not what we do here. That's not what I do. I like to look at things rationally. I'm an American. I was a Marine, enlisted, and then an officer. So I'm very passionate about the freedoms that we used to have, or still have vestiges of, in this country. And I do look at Russia as an adversarial country. And same with China and a lot of those Middle Eastern countries. So when I look at it and I'm giving a rational, a realistic assessment, it's not because I'm trying to bash anybody over here. I'm trying to let you know, or give you the awareness that, hey, we're being lied to. And it's important when you're developing an opinion or developing a strategy that you have all the facts, or at least most of them, and aren't in this state of mind where nth degree thinking, it's all the way to one side or one to the other. You need to be able to take in all these facts objectively to develop an actual opinion. You must understand your enemy if you're going to defeat him, unless he's like super weak. But in any rational world, you need to understand the enemy to develop an actual plan, to understand what he's thinking, what his objectives are, so you can counter them, or whatever the case may be. You should understand what I'm saying. But anyway, we go into some of this stuff. I'm going to give you a number of actors that I just had. I just went into that, but now we're going to talk about some of these fake conservatives because they're peddling this crap. The Brian Kilmeades of the world, he's up there with. Remember, we'll go into like the Mark Levin thing. Let's go into that first. I've been talking about Mark Levin for a long time, and how we might agree with a lot of what he says, might agree with a lot of this, with a lot of these other people, but this guy's fake as you could possibly be. Now, a number of years ago, if you're not familiar with a guy named Michael Savage was famous for just railing at callers coming in there, like a that East Coast type, New York type, I don't know, brashness, and he would, call them names or whatever, hang up on them, all kinds of stuff. And I remember him getting like kicked off of MSNBC. He had a show there for just like a weekend, and then they kicked him off. But because he's very brash, and that was part of his charm. But that's just him, and you could tell it's natural, and you could tell that it's just Michael. And he, God bless the guy. He's helped me get to where I am when it comes to like listening to him and understanding the brainwashing that goes on in this country. But then he started talking about his dog, right? He had his dog, and it was just like this thing. He'd like to talk about food. He'd like to talk about his dog. He'd like to yell at people if they're saying stuff they'd call in, disagree with them. It was hilarious. At the same time, Mark Levin and a number of other characters were still in the media. Mark Levin would do a lot of guest appearances on Sean Hannity's show, and I think even then it was Hannity and Combs, and then after Combs, and they did their own thing. He was still on there. During that time, Mark was very cognizant. He was very level-headed. Didn't yell or anything. He just spoke. And I mean, you agree with him or disagree with him on things, but he just spoke. It wasn't until Michael Savage started blowing up, like he was already kind of underground big. But he started really blowing up on the mainstream. He's got some national interest or whatever, that Mark flipped the switch. He flipped the switch, and all of a sudden he was the guy that was yelling at people. He was the guy that all of a sudden they had their dogs on their show, which nobody had really done that besides Michael with that kind of intimate. I'm sure people talked about their dogs, but Michael would actually talk about his dog, a very intimate manner, like just how loving he was, and like all the little things that the dog would do and what he was doing, just like ingrained him into the show. And then that's when Mark started doing it after Michael got big. And then even Mark was bashing one of Michael's lawyers over something that was going on, I think, when Michael was fighting about being banned in England. But anyway, so I'm just saying that Mark Levin is as fake as you can, as anything. He's fake as a $3 bill. Granted, we might agree with him on a lot of the issues or whatever, but besides foreign policy, that's what I mean. He's fake. He goes with the wind. And he's found that niche. Once that worked for him, he stayed with it. But remember, this guy now, he's supposedly defending a lot of the guys that he was just bashing a couple years ago. He used to throw Ron and Rand Paul under the bus, hated their guts, hated guys like Thomas Massey, hated guys like Mike Lee, I don't even think he liked Ted Cruz for a while. I can't remember that one for sure, but I just remember him throwing all these guys under the bus, mainly on their foreign policy, because Mark has never seen a war he doesn't like. All right. And he's one of those guys that will convince you that those actors over there, they're insane, no matter who it is. And not all your enemies are insane. In fact, they're very sane in a majority of them. They're insane. They're irrational. They could, throw a nuke at you at any moment. There's a dirty bomb over here. Granted, there's a lot of threats out there, but this guy is, his foreign policy wise, he's a John Bolton type. Like him and John Bolton, I don't even know, they're probably good friends. Who knows? But we all know John Bolton was one of the chief, I don't know, he's a lying sack. That's all it is. He's just a war propagandist. But anyway, now we get to Brian Kilmeade. I was just listening to him over the weekend. Granted, I've listened to him some other times. He's very, very wave-toppy understanding of economics, very wave-toppy. He's just a conservative hack, or I'm going to call him a Republican spokespiece hack, in my opinion. Would they pseudo put them in maybe they don't advertise he's Republican, but they put him in a box like the whole right wingers or whatever. Just give him this, and we'll skew those views over to this side. We'll hamper them in. We'll keep their opinions in a little box. But anyway, and you can tell he's not really thought out a lot of these things. I know he's written a book, and there's some other things and that he's done. But this weekend he has some guy on from whatever he used to be, CIA guy from Moldova or whatever. But they were just bashing Russia, praising the Ukrainians are winning, Russia's failing, it's blah blah, Putin's insane, the same type of stuff. But not once did they stop and ask, well, is it the truth, or where are we getting this information, or is this just repeated from other, what sources are there? Maybe we should look at other, what's going on overseas, what they're reporting. Maybe we look at what Russia's reporting and contrast at that. Maybe we can look at, maybe Putin isn't insane. Maybe we look at like what the Saudi Arabian deal is. Maybe they're just not, maybe there is something going. There's a bunch of aspects that I've touched on about this conflict that you can go, but no, they just go into like, hey, these guys are stupid, pretty much. They're insane. They could throw a nuclear bomb, and they'll justify it because we did one, and we threw a couple nukes in World War II, and that's how they're going to justify it. And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, I guess you could go down that hole, but that's just not what you get when you listen to Putin about this stuff. Like, he has threatened, like, hey, now that these states are part of Russia, yeah, there will be ramifications, but maybe tactical news, maybe he will, but I mean, we are egging that on. It, I feel like. The point being is you need to keep an open mind and don't just allow yourself to be force fed this stuff by these guys. Are fake. I'm telling you. I've been around some of these characters. I've seen it behind the scenes. These guys are about as shallow as you can possibly get when it comes to like understanding liberty and understanding various concepts and having real political opinions that matter and care about you. These guys are fake. They're there for the ratings. I've been a real critic about Tucker Carlson too. We'll go into another one. Tucker Carlson, because of his, and he surprised me. Maybe he's one of the guys that like turned. I don't know, but I'm always leery about him, and it goes back to his CNN days with the bow tie and whatnot over there, and he was kind of weak. I don't know. Maybe he's changed. That's one that I will withhold judgment on him. I don't know. But back then he wasn't that great. And I know some of his economic views aren't necessarily free market or free enterprise based. But he does a lot of good work. I can't hold anything against. Another guy that's changed a little bit for me is Glenn Beck. I think he's done a lot of fair reporting and has really pushed ahead on a lot of things. And I think he means well at the very least. Sean Hannity, he is a war hawk. He's never seen a war. He hasn't liked, even under the Democratic administration. But anyway, but also he has a very wave-toppy view of economics. He doesn't know what he's talking about when he's talking about inflation. I mean, the guy, I don't know. He's just not, there's no depth there, right? You scratch the surface and you get to the bone. There's nothing there. And I'm not saying that he's like some kind of shield or whatever, CIA shield, but I'm just saying that I don't know. I think sometimes I feel like he's genuine, but other times I don't know what's his game, but that's a guy I would be leery about, but I don't know for sure what's going on with him. But I just know from my own observation, like Mark Levin, he's went with the flag on the wind, and then guys like Bolden and Kilmeade, those guys are stooges. I mean, we just know them. And a lot of these people they're bringing on that are from prior intelligentsia, whatever folks, they have a monopic view of this as well. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm not saying totally throw out what they're saying. Some of these guys do have good analysis, especially when it comes to certain things, military capabilities and certain histories. But you can't just be spoon-fed their opinion and what they're saying. I know I'm just going on and on about this, but it's important. It's important to. We used to, teach this critical thinking skill in school. You gather a bunch of different opinions and facts or whatever. You develop some sort of hypothesis and, either run a test if it's scientifically, or if you're just trying to figure out what you're trying to figure out, you run facts by it and make logical analysis from it and develop whatever your opinion on it. If that made any sense. But anyway, it's just I'm kind of worked up over this whole thing. Because it drives me insane how I'll detach from the mainstream U.S. media, and then every once in a while I'll go in just to see. And once you detach yourself, and I learned this from Michael Savage back in the day, detach yourself from that and you actually seek real knowledge, then you go back in and you can really see where all the propaganda is, the right and left boxes that are put forth and are constraining a lot of people's minds. But anyway, so we got here, we'll go into a little bit of the Russian stuff. So the Crimean bridge that was blown up, which, the Russians are reporting that was UK intelligence that gave the Ukrainians this kind of stuff to help them, put forth this, the bombs or whatever. And Ukraine has claimed credit, they claim credit for it. And subsequently, Putin, as he said, has been striking a number of cities with various weaponry. And of course, on our side, they're saying that, well, it's been highly ineffective, and which probably so, because, some of the anti-aircraft stuff or whatever the missile defense systems that we've given them, they're fairly sophisticated. And if they know how to use them, or if they're not being sold in the black market or even sold to the Russians, who knows? they can be used to take down some of this stuff. Not the hypersonic missiles. We don't have anything against that. But anyway, and at the same time, that bridge is, the traffic's back flowing. So I mean, I understand what I don't. It is a key, I don't know, transport of goods and services. So it's not a bad target really if you think about it from the Ukrainians' perspective. But you got to be able, when you hit targets like that, you got to be able to follow through. So this, in my opinion, they're claiming credit for it. This tells you the tale of where the actual strength of the Ukrainian military is when it comes to manpower. Like supposedly they're making all these gains, even though the Russians kind of pulled back in a lot of these places. And when you have a strike like this, that's it's significant, and there's no follow through, there's no ability to follow through. It kind of shows you a little bit of what kind of Ukrainian military strength is going on there. I'm scared. I'm not scared, but I mean, I'm actually afraid of some of our insane people that are running this country and what they might do, or and the money that they're throwing over there in Ukraine that we have no accountability over. There's nobody over there like running. I've heard of, there are some special forces or intel guys that are running around over there, but they're not accountable for the money that's being sent over there. Who knows where all this billions of dollars are going? Who knows where the military gear is going? It's going over there either being destroyed in combat, or it's being whatever it might. Some of it's probably being used, some of it's probably being sold on the black market, or various characters are taking control over it. We really don't know, in my opinion, the status of the Ukrainian military at this point. That's just where I'm at on this. We don't know the structure, if they're still how they're structured in the period, what their chain of command is, besides Zelensky, like what's going on. The other thing is, here's one last thing, and if you blast it through this, there's a little nugget of something. They were talking about how the Russian military, our media, is not all it's cracked up to be. And this CIA guy was bringing it up. And it's like, they're being tested for the first time. No, they've been tested. We've seen them. We know how good they are. We've seen them in Chechnya. We've seen them in Syria. And they were going up against some of our weapons in Syria. In fact, you remember the video of one of their helicopters being taken down by a Stinger missile system. Supposedly we didn't arm those guys at the time. That's what they're saying, but you can see this guy setting up and he filmed it. But anyway, we've seen them. In fact, they're bringing in a Syrian commander now, a general, to take over operations in Ukraine. But we've seen the Russian military operate in these areas of operation, these AOs. And we're familiar with their training in certain regards in some of their units. And to sit there and say that this is somehow indicative of the capabilities of the Russian military, or one, to paint it as some kind of failure, and then use that supposed failure as indicative of their military in order to kind of drum up some support from the West or whatnot, is just very naive and dangerous, to be totally honest, because the Russian military is pretty solid, and we've seen them in the operations. Now I don't know about the reservists. I know they're calling them, I have no idea what kind of training the reservists do, but their main line guys are pretty solid, and I don't care what anybody says about that. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of propaganda. You got to look, don't look now, look back, look at this, what was going on in Syria, look what was going on in Chechnya, and look at some of their operations when they're dealing with some of these terrorist organizations as well. Very disciplined, very hardcore. I'm not saying they have the same capabilities as our military, but we cannot underestimate them if we ever happen to get into a conflict over them. This underestimating our enemy is really going to bite us in the ass, to be totally honest, one of these days. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Peace.